Wonderful. Well, I'll leave the poll open for a few more minutes, so feel free as you enter to answer some of the questions. But welcome everyone to our webinar today on unlocking profitability and purpose. My name is Carissa Bergeau, and I'm the project manager with the BC Hotel Association. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm joining today from Vancouver, which is located on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, and I'm grateful to live and work on these lands. At the BCHA, our mission is to support a thriving, future-focused accommodation industry in British Columbia. We look to do this through many initiatives, such as our Go Green program, which was created to help hoteliers identify practical, cost-saving ways to reduce their environmental impact while also improving their bottom line. Through Go Green, we offer tools, resources, and partnerships that empower properties to take action, whether that's completing energy assessments, assessing utility rebates, or measuring and tracking emissions. And at the heart of this initiative is our partnership with GreenStep and the EcoFund program. The EcoFund is a powerful example of how hotels can pool resources and invest in energy efficiency improvements that benefit both individual properties and the broader industry. Today, we're thrilled to be able to showcase some real-world impact of the program with insights from the GreenStep team and hotel leaders who've already seen the benefits firsthand. Thank you again for taking the time to be here. We're excited for a dynamic conversation that we hope will leave you feeling inspired and ready to take the next step in your sustainability journey. If you do have questions throughout, you're welcome to use the Q&A function or the chat. I know we will address some of those later on in the session. But with that, I'm going to hand things over to Angela Nagy, GreenStep's President and CEO, to help set the stage for today's discussion. So over to you, Angela.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Carissa and the BCHA for hosting this valuable webinar, and a huge thanks to our panelists as well for joining today whom I will introduce in a few moments. And I would like to acknowledge that I'm presenting from Kelowna, which is the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Syilx Okanagan people. And GreenStep is very grateful to be headquartered here and are committed to creating right relationship with the First Peoples of this region. So today we are going to be hearing from our panelists about their sustainability journeys, and in particular around the EcoFund program. And before I get started with a bit of laying the foundation, I'll just give a quick background on GreenStep. So I started the company in 2008 to help businesses and organizations to measure and improve their sustainability performance and take climate action. Our processes are based on proven and globally recognized frameworks and standards to help ensure both credibility for all of the great companies and organizations that we work with, and also best practices. And we really try to make an effort to practice what we preach at GreenStep. So we've been a certified B Corporation since 2015. We're Rainbow registered, we're climate neutral certified, living wage certified in British Columbia. We're an active member of the Global Sustainable Tourism Council and an affiliate member of UN Tourism. And we've worked with quite a few businesses and organizations from a number of sectors, including, of course, tourism and hospitality, and many other sectors of the Canadian economy, with governments of all sizes, businesses of all sizes, from mom and pop shops all the way up to much larger organizations. So let's dive into first some of the trends that are impacting the demand for sustainable hospitality. In my nearly 20 years of working in this space, there's really been a tremendous increase in the demand for sustainable hospitality and sustainable business in general, largely driven by both consumer demand and also employee demand. The 2023 UN Sustainability Report found that 73% of global tourists prefer to stay in hotels that apply sustainable practices. PwC's 2024 Voice of the Consumer found that consumers are willing to spend an average of almost 10% more on sustainably produced or sourced goods and services. And the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance 2023 progress report showed that hotels with active sustainability programs experienced 23% lower employee turnover compared to industry averages, as employees really tend to stay longer when they perceive their employer as socially and environmentally responsible. Looking at some Booking.com statistics, according to Booking.com's 2024 Sustainable Travel Report, 83% of travelers consider sustainable travel important, with 76% expressing a desire to travel more sustainably within the next 12 months. And environmental concerns are influencing these travel decisions. The same report showed that 42% of travelers have been influenced by recent news about climate change, which is prompting them to make more sustainable choices. And travelers are really rethinking what value means to them. And that comes into play, whether they're carving out more sustainable and regenerative experiences to finding more meaningful ways to spend their money when they're traveling. And that's for both business and for pleasure. The challenge is that it's often really difficult for travelers to learn about what businesses and destinations are doing to support sustainability because it's poorly communicated or not really communicated at all. So this is really essential in order to tap into this sentiment and desire so that can be fulfilled when folks are traveling. So we do need to do a much better job as an industry of sharing our stories in both a credible and an impactful way. And as that demand for more sustainable travel and hospitality has increased, so has the prevalence of green claims, some of which are considered greenwashing, whether that's happening intentionally or unintentionally, just honest mistakes and not really knowing how or what to communicate. And greenwashing is providing untrue, misleading information that claims an organization's products and services or experiences are more environmentally sound than they truly are. And so with the increasing demand for more sustainable products and services and experiences, greenwashing has really become a widespread issue, and governments are actually starting to crack down on that through legislation. So the pending EU green claims legislation is one of these changes. Anyone that's marketing to a European guest needs to make sure that they're integrating measurable practices that comply with these directives. So measurable is the key word, being able to back up the claims that are being made. And here in Canada, Bill C-59 is aligning with these global efforts, targeting false advertising and promoting fair competition. And it's a major piece of legislation that was passed in 2024 and includes some important changes that affect businesses, especially those making environmental claims. And one of the most important is also about greenwashing. So if you're making environmental or sustainability claims, again, making sure that they're truthful and verifiable. On the flip side, there's also the practice of green hushing. And green hushing is when companies deliberately choose to under-communicate or completely withhold information about their sustainability efforts, even when they're making meaningful progress, because they fear public scrutiny or backlash, regulatory or legal risks, or market skepticism, people not really believing in the credibility of those claims. So, for example, if a hotel had achieved some impressive carbon reductions through energy efficiency upgrades, but don't mention it in marketing materials or reports because they're afraid someone will challenge them on areas where they haven't made progress, that is known as green hushing. But if you're not sharing your real achievements, it does a number of things. It really slows down industry-wide progress because those positive actions aren't shared and can't inspire or guide others. Consumers looking for those sustainable options are going to miss out on knowing which companies and which hotels align with their values. And it also reduces that transparency and accountability. So it makes it real harder to track those improvements within the sector. So how can hotels respond to these changes, respond to these regulations, respond to this consumer sentiment, while at the same time ensuring credibility? And so today we're going to hear from three panelists who've made some really meaningful progress on their sustainability initiatives with a focus on the EcoFund program and they're not afraid to share their incredible achievements. And they've, got information on their website, but they also have the data and a credible process to back up their claims. So for those that may not be familiar with the GreenStep EcoFund program, we launched a partnership with the BC Hotel Association in 2020 to promote the program alongside their other amazing Go Green initiatives, the BCHA Sustainability Playbook, their offering of complimentary energy assessments with the BCHA Energy Advisor, and much more, including partnerships with great folks like Ben at Better Table to reduce food waste, and with GreenStep's EcoFund program that specifically focuses on helping hotels to generate a fund to invest in energy saving, cost-cutting projects at your properties that reduce your carbon footprint and help bring credibility to your sustainability story, really helping to avoid both greenwashing and green hushing. And through the EcoFund program, we've helped over 100 properties in BC and across Canada. We've reduced over 1,000 tons of CO2 and we've supported the investment of over $4 million in projects that are driving really meaningful environmental impacts, while also reducing operating costs. And the beauty of the program is that there are no upfront costs to get started. So I'm now going to turn it over to our esteemed panel, who will share more about their journey with sustainability, EcoFund program, and we'll be sure to leave some time for Q&A at the end. So I'm just going to go ahead and introduce our panelists. So we've got Kelly Watt, who's the Director of Special Projects with the Sandman Hotel Group. We've got David McBean, the General Manager for Watermark Beach Resort. And we've got Julia Canton, who is the Sustainability Manager with Huntingdon Hotel and Suites. So to kick us off today, let's get started with Julia, and then would love to hear from our other panelists on what were the key drivers in taking your efforts around energy efficiency and carbon reduction to the next level. And maybe we'll start with Julia.
Oh, hi, thank you, Angela. First, I would like to acknowledge that I'm on the unceded land of the Lekwungen-speaking people and the Songhees Nation, loving here, and really appreciating having the opportunity to live on these lands. So I've been working with the Huntingdon Hotel and Suites since 2017, and that's about the time that we started our journey. Carbon efficiency for us is a value-driven driver first. Sustainability is really at the core of our business. We fully implement the triple bottom line, and the carbon efficiency, reducing it in our operation is really a big part of our decision-making process. The other part of it as well, of course, is a strategic investment into cost savings. So as we know, climate change is happening, regulations in the government are changing, and our property is a very old property. We have heritage building here. 3 of them are from the 19th century. And then those were buildings that were built at a time where, sorry, I have a call coming in. Pardon me about that. There we go. Sorry about that. And so our buildings were built at a time where energy efficiency was just not considered at all in the building process. So they're very highly inefficient, and there's a lot of costs involved, capital investments to change that. So this EcoFund program for us was a great solution to basically all of those 3 points. So our carbon reduction, really addressing some key areas into improving our property for energy efficiency, and then also developing a strategic investment into long-term cost savings and adapting to government regulations, which we know are coming our way. So.
Thanks, Julia. Maybe I'll pass it over to Kelly next.
Yeah, thank you. When we started with the EcoFund, it was basically driven by the fact that we had a number of properties in our portfolio. There's about 60 hotels across Canada, that everybody was doing a little bit different, and there was people that were very committed to the concept of improving our energy efficiency and carbon footprint. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to make bring it all together so it was a more focused approach from a corporate perspective, which at that point when we got involved with the GreenStep EcoFund, it helped us tremendously in this path because we were able to do the assessments for all the properties that were consistent and gave us that valuable information based on 60 different properties across the country, as well as give us the baseline measurements so that what we were doing could actually be measured. And that was something that would have been really difficult for us to do on our own, but having that expertise to help guide us through that process was invaluable. So that was sort of the start of it. And then as Julia alluded to, a lot of our properties are older, and having the opportunity to, as with our new builds and our new projects, we are obviously building in that efficiency and that improvement in our carbon footprint. But for the ones that needed retrofitting, having that support from the fund to be able to, again, strategically look at opportunities that would be more energy efficient, both benefiting us with the cost savings, as well as reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, was also very helpful to us. So that's been our focus since we really put the fund into process in the last, we put a test pilot in just to see how it would go, and it was very successful. So then we brought the rest of the portfolio in so that we now have 55 properties that are participating. And that supports across the board with all of our energy efficiencies and improvements and updating that we're doing.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. David, what were your key drivers in taking your efforts around energy efficiency and carbon reduction to the next level?
So I'm not going to take credit for starting EcoFund at this property. When I arrived at the property a few years ago, it was already in place, and I remember having to do a one-on-one call to actually ask and say, okay, what is this? I'm not even really sure. But once I heard it, it made a lot of sense. It was a property that was in transition, and having had some experience working in some Fairmonts that are in Canada's national parks, and was kind of already used to a certain level of environmental sustainability and things like that from those properties. So when you arrive at a property like this, you see already so much opportunity of, oh, we could be doing this, we could be doing that, we could be doing that. But this allowed kind of a way to finance and do those things. And in doing those things, there's cost savings on things that when you start saving costs on those, it creates funds to do other projects that are kind of, outside on that. So, we have used, it for an audit as well to help us determine what else we can do. There's some no-brainer stuff that we've done, like, when you have like inefficient washers, so we've replaced that. But I'm in a community that doesn't have water meters, so I don't really have a baseline, to do that. I was saying to our panel earlier, I'm in a community that doesn't have recycling pickup. So, how do we do that? And, and how do you measure that when no one's really counting it and there's no, commercial company that does that. So to be able to, use the program to first, get a baseline, figure out where you're at, and then use the program to make improvements from that baseline, but also in a way that helps it with your financial bottom line. It works out really well. So
awesome. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Maybe circling back, we'll start with Kelly this time. What would you say were the key benefits or savings you've experienced by participating in the program, financial or otherwise, other maybe less tangible benefits that you've seen?
Well, there's certainly been some financial benefits, and we've managed to, again, we're dealing with our EcoFund is established across Canada in all our Canadian hotels. So we've been able to pull off approximately in the first year and a half of doing the program, around about 35 projects that have been initiated through the fund, meeting the criteria for what the goal is. So there's definitely been a financial benefit there. But as far as the intangibles, there's a lot of our team members across the country that are very committed to environmental improvements and taking care of our environment. So that's been really rewarding to watch the engagement. We have a across the country green team steering committee that helps us with, introducing the initiatives, and they're also instrumental in helping spread the word through the different properties, which really gets that team engagement involved. It's helped us with, elevating our teams with pursuing sustainability certification as well, and getting their enthusiasm and buy-in for that. But just generally speaking, I think there's also been some good feedback from guests. We see a good return on feedback from guests, and generally bringing a lot of like-minded people in our company together with that focus. So I think it's got a lot of positivity to it. Some of the advances are a little bit slower than our teams would like to see because they do get pretty gung-ho, but it's definitely brought, I think, a lot of engagement from throughout the organization.
Thanks, Kelly. David, what benefits or savings have you experienced?
So a lot of mine is actually quite similar to what Kelly had just said. When just for a simple example, you have a banquet ice machine. It's ultra old. It's using inefficient gas. It's got it's kind of clunkety. It's uses a pile of power, water wastage, filters, everything, right? So you can either spend money to repair it, or you can, access a portion of funds through the Green Fund and you replace it with a whole brand new banquet ice machine, right? And next thing you know, from an operations perspective, there's savings there. But then your staff are like, oh my gosh, our leaders actually care about us having the tools that we need to do the job. So they're engaged, right? And the customers are, they're not feeling any operational impacts. It's a small thing like that, and of course there's financial savings for us. Again, using the example of a washer that uses less water. It's newer. It works properly. If you've ever worked in a property that has its own laundry and it's not working, that's the opposite of staff engagement. That's yeah. So so for us, the benefits has been, allowing us to improve the operation while simultaneously, finding some cost savings to do it. And when you're improving the operation and the tools to do the job, it just flows to everyone. It flows to the staff. The staff it flows to the staff. It flows to the guests, and it just keeps doing that as well.
Great, thank you, David. Julia, you got anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, like a lot of it for us echoes what Kelly and David said. There's definitely cost savings for us. It really enabled us to tackle some key projects that otherwise would have been overlooked due to the cost of them. So that's been really, really helpful. And then just to give you an example as well as the cost, like we did our first project with the EcoFund was actually a full LED retrofit of the property in the common areas, which is something we've been pushing back for quite a few years. And then we were able to do it. And we've been tracking for about a year afterwards, kind of the results of that. And we've seen a 13% decrease per occupied rooms in energy usage just from, that project. So that was very gratifying to see, and encouraged us to tackle some more. We just finished the latest one we finished is the installation of our roofs. And like I said, some of our property is heritage, and we found out when we went up on the roof that there was actually no installation at all. So summer, we're very excited to see the results of that and how that will make a difference. But also, as Kelly mentioned, like doing the engagement with sustainability and engaging our staff also really helps. They love being part of it. They like to see the evolution. They like to be part of the solution. And when they're engaged, they share that enthusiasm to the guests who then get more supportive of the different programs and everything. And like one thing that we've noticed as well on our end is not only they like being part of it, but we actually seen a reduction in turnover. So our staff turnover is actually quite low, especially in the last couple of years. And we know through doing internal guest feedback and everything that is part of it. So them being part of that solution. So that's been very rewarding. And then the last, one other intangible benefit is the reputation of the property. When we started through our sustainability journey in 2017, we were a regular business model, and now we've evolved. We've got our certifications. We've got recognized by the industry, and now, we're seen as a leading sustainability hotel here in Victoria. So all of that are benefits, in part of the program.
Yeah, I love that. All great benefits. I love that you're asking your team members about that in employee satisfaction surveys. It's hard to be able to quantify and measure to what extent satisfaction is driven by sustainability initiatives if you're not asking them. So I think that's a great tip for other hoteliers that are doing employee surveys to include that question. What do you know about our sustainability program? What do you think about it? And also a great opportunity to ask if they have any ideas and get some of that that engagement. So I think I've talked to lots of hoteliers over the last decade since we've been running this program. Initially launched with Watermark was part of our initial pilot back in 2015 with a couple of others. And the biggest question the biggest concern we always hear, or the biggest question is like, well, what do the guests think? And I'm sure that's a question that's on everybody's mind about how guests respond to the eco fee, but also to your sustainability initiatives in general. Are you getting feedback? We talked about employee feedback. Are you getting feedback from guests? So, David, maybe we'll pass the baton to you to start this one off.
So it was a question for me as well. Again, when I was arriving here, and someone was explaining it, and I'm like, okay, so a team, I'm like, so what do the guests think about that? Because it was new to me as well. What I was hearing from the team was, a couple of people here and there might say something, but in general, everyone's good with it. And then they start asking questions like, well, is it on our website? And like, well, no. I'm like, okay, well, you need to communicate it. When they're booking a reservation, does it say it anywhere? Well, no, we didn't know if we should. I'm like, okay. But once you take the time to properly communicate it and put it in there and it's in your confirmations, after that, like, I haven't heard anyone comment about it in over a year. Our fee is $2 per room night, just for a numbers perspective. And it's been over a year since I've had anyone comment about it. But, definitely when I first arrived, I'd probably say maybe 3-4 people a month, but it's because when I arrived, it wasn't communicated well. So what I would say to anyone is that if you do the proper job of communicating, explaining it, the term that Angela just used, green hushing.
Yes.
I just learned that term when you said it a few minutes ago. If that's kind of what's going on, you might find a few people might comment on it. But if you're really doing a good job of communicating what it is and kind of how that comes together, and your team knows what it is as well, it's part of your training. Just so your front desk agent says, well, I don't know what that is, right? As long as you do that, it actually works very, very well. For that, it's not a concern for us at all.
Great. Thanks, David. And for new properties, we do provide guidance and some support in that training as well. Julia, what about yourself? What are the guests saying?
Yeah, so we've actually been having Eco Fee since 2018. We were with a different program before, and I think at the time we were the only property in Victoria having an Eco Fee, or one of the only ones. But we've received little to no negative engagement with it. People are usually very receptive of it. We also, with our traveling partners, even with government and other clients, they've been really receptive of it. We you know, again, I think what David says is correct. Communication is key. So making them understand the value of it, the purpose of the fee. And then they usually get on board. What we do with our staff, because again, it's key for them to be on board with them and to be enthusiastic about it, engaging it with the guests when they ask about it. As part of their onboarding orientation, they actually have a full sustainability course that's done about the particular sustainability practices that we have here, the different certifications, also the achievements that we've done, so they can communicate that, you know, we're not just taking the money, we can actually prove where the money is going. And so usually that is very well received, and then it's passed on to the guests if they have any information. On our website, we also have a sustainability report, and we have information where actually guests can go there and see exactly where the money that, you know, they contributed through the EcoFund has been reinvested, which actually brings a positive feeling for them, because they really feel they're part of the solution as well. And like we do with our staff, we also have a guest satisfaction survey that is sent to our guests afterwards. And it is one of the questions as well, is like what they think about our sustainability practices here. How can they, you know, if they have any ideas as well, how can we improve it? And we usually get fantastic feedback through that. So it's really nice to see. And like I said, we've been doing it for 7 years now. Yeah. And we've never had any pushbacks. It's been such a great program.
Amazing. Yeah, that's great to hear. And just the general guest response in guest feedback surveys has been good, probably reflecting your overall sustainability commitment, and the guests can see that visibility is so important. And yet so many, you know, I travel quite a lot, and it's hard to find that information. You have to dig for it or ask. And I think lots of hotels are doing a lot of great things, but just not really getting the message out there. Kelly, what is Sandman Hotel Group hearing from guests around your sustainability initiatives or EcoFund in general?
Well, as I mentioned, we actually ran a test pilot in one of our properties here in Kelowna for over a year before we actually rolled it out to the remainder of the properties. And in that time, we were all kind of bracing ourselves for the negative feedback, and there wasn't any. So after a year, there was the occasional time that we might have to reverse the eco fee off somebody's bill if they were adamant, say a climate change denier or something. But for the most part, it was like nothing. Like there was no real feedback leaning either way. One of the things, though, what we did really note was that and David mentioned it, is the importance of the transparency and communication, making sure that it was transparently indicated on booking sites. So not just ours, but you had to monitor like the OTA sites as well. So that was really important to make sure that it's front and center, and then making sure it's on people's email confirmations, all that kind of thing. The other part was making sure that our team members had the right verbiage to actually talk about it to the guests, so that they felt if somebody did ask them about it, they felt confident in the way they were answering. And that was both our frontline team members at the front desk, but also, you know, booking agents and our sales teams as well. So I think one of the things that we really had to be very diligent about was anything that was a contracted rate that had been negotiated. We had to make sure that it was rolled out, you know, at the termination of a contract, so that going forward, the wording to those clients was actually really clear and effective as well. And that included we do a lot of tour bus business and that kind of thing, FIT travel, that we had to make sure that was worked into the negotiated rates for upcoming years, and being really careful about how that was rolled out. So a lot of corporate clients have specific rates, and again, working into their rate agreements that was going to be coming up down the road. So that communication was really important. And it was, I think, with our sales team, it was interesting to watch, because you know how sales people can get a little bit nervous about anything that elevates the rate, but a lot of them were so enthusiastic about it that they were actually, and there's a lot of our clients that are actually now asking for, you know, whether it be through RFPs, they want to know about your sustainability practices. So being able to actually roll that out and say, yes, we have formalized programs in place, and this is what it looks like, really bridges any resistance as far as those negotiated rates as well. So that's what we found.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that's a really important point that in addition to the, you know, traveler and consumer demand, that corporate demand is increasing as well, and more showing up on RFPs, and not just, you know, there was a time, and maybe some still look like this, where it's fairly vague, you know, what are you doing? But more and more I'm seeing like, well, like, what are your results? If you've been doing stuff, you know, you tell us how you've been measuring and what those impacts have been. So, not too dissimilar from some of the legislation coming out. If you're making a claim, great, you just need to be able to back it up. So having the data to do that is so important. Before we go any further, I just wanted to check in to see if we have any questions that have come in. Carissa, I'm not looking at that myself right now.
I do, yeah. I have one that came through the Q&A function here. So, of course, as a reminder for anyone, please feel free to drop it in there at any time throughout. But we do have one that came in. What culturally relevant indicators can be used to measure the success of sustainability projects in Indigenous hotel settings beyond carbon reductions and cost savings?
It's specifically in like an Indigenous owned hotel, or more general to cultural indicators in general?
The question does specify Indigenous hotel settings. But maybe, I don't know, Thomas, if you want to maybe expand on that question a little bit. Oh, owned hotels, so Indigenous owned, yeah.
So looking for, and I can turn it over to the panel first to see if there's anything that any of our panelists have done around cultural indicators that that could be used, to measure the success of sustainability projects, and with a focus on Indigenous owned hotel settings. Are you looking at any cultural indicators in your properties?
For our property at Watermark, not specifically to that. I don't know if I've ever viewed reducing carbon footprint and environmental initiatives as something that is specific to First Nations or not First Nations, or I think it's a human thing that we should all be doing it. My previous property was on the lands of the Osoyoos Indian Band. It did not have EcoFund in place, but we still were tackling environmental initiatives, even from, you know, if you had even a plastic cup at the pool area, it was, you know, made from a cup that was biodegradable and from plants rather than, you know, just a regular plastic, just so it was cheaper, or sorry, not cheaper. It was not cheaper, so that it was easier for, you know, waste management and things like that. And there was always an interest from them to hear what we were doing, but I don't want to go as far as to say cultural. It was just something that we kind of shared, that, you know, we're taking care of the land that we're on, that we're respecting the land, you know, by doing those initiatives, even though that wasn't tied to EcoFund, but there was always a question and interest to know that we were being good stewards.
Mm-hmm. Kelly, you had your hand up.
I was just going to add that, you know, from the EcoFund verified, there's very specific guidelines that we're actually measuring, you know, carbon reductions, waste reductions, water conservation. We're actually doing those measurements on that type of aspect. But from a cultural perspective, I think that would tie more into the sustainability certification, which is something that we've just been doing with all of our properties. Again, all our North American properties are going through sustainability certification, and that's very much part of those assessments that we're doing for that sustainability certification, as opposed to the EcoFund verified program is really focused on those carbon emissions and actually reducing our footprint on the world, as opposed to the cultural side of it. I think if you're looking at it from a cultural benefit, it would again go back to our team's engagement and the fact that we, as David said, we're respecting the land and trying to make it better. But it's not so much like a cultural measurement as opposed to sort of a incidental benefit, I would say.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. I think that's a great suggestion. With the certification definitely has a broader and a whole section dedicated to cultural sustainability. For the individual that posed that question, we do offer a free assessment via our website. Happy to share that out with you later, but just at greenstep.ca. You can access the free sustainability score, which does have a whole section dedicated to cultural sustainability, Indigenous and non-Indigenous cultural heritage elements. The other thing that I was thinking, and just thinking about the question, some cultural indicators to measure the success of sustainability initiatives. So I guess if sustainability initiatives are falling under the big sustainability umbrella, which could include environmental initiatives or cultural initiatives or social and community initiatives, similar to what some of the panelists have shared, things like employee and guest satisfaction, to understand asking questions specific to the cultural elements of your sustainability initiatives to gauge feedback from guests and employees around those things specifically. Some of the other things that can be measured in general, something that we do at GreenStep is looking at things like the percentage, our team makeup as far as gender, ethnic background, that type of thing. And we've got some targets around that we aim to maintain. And then whether it's related to energy efficiency projects or other projects, things like the number or percentage of local Indigenous suppliers or contractors that you're using are all ways that you could start to measure. But I think, yeah, starting to survey community and or guests and or employees around some of those questions, and even, trying to understand what metrics would be important to them around that subject could be a good place to start.
Perfect. And there was another question in the chat here. It says, "Hi, David, you had mentioned your $2 per room night fee. What fee were you referring to?"
So the EcoFund, that's where the fund is coming from. It's a fee that is being applied to a guest bill per room night for us. So when Room and Tax posts, it's posting GST, PSD, MRDT, and then it's putting the $2 for our property. I know not all of us are the same amount, but a $2 EcoFund fee, and that EcoFund fee is taxable by GST, just for the accountant-minded people in the group. And at the end of the month, there's reporting to EcoFund of how much is collected in the month. On a portal, you send that to them, then they send back an invoice. Invoice goes to accounting, and the money that is collected is paid off to EcoFund, goes into an account, and then there's they kind of keep you up to date as to the balance. And then when you are looking to use the funds, you let EcoFund know why, and you have to kind of explain. You can't just ask for a check and they'll just send over money. You have to show the project and what it is, what you're doing, what is it now, how is it expected to reduce carbon footprint, and then once you kind of do that, I've heard some cases that you can do it and send it after. I'm more of a plead my case and show what I'm doing at the beginning, get pre-approval, and then I go do it, just to be sure. But yeah.
Yeah, great question, Mark. And the other thing that happens is at the beginning of the EcoFund program, a comprehensive energy assessment is provided. We look at historic energy bills and come in and either on site or virtually do a fairly comprehensive technology audit, if you will, to look at what those opportunities are, and then provide a really comprehensive list of potential projects that could be supported with the Eco Fund. We also provide support in getting quotes for those projects, comparing quotes, and then ultimately helping you to decide where is the best place to deploy those eco funds that will generate a great return on investment as well as the carbon reduction. So that's a really important piece of the program up front that then helps to determine where the eco fund can be deployed. And for anyone that's interested, we can provide a sort of complimentary, no commitment estimate of how much you could generate in your eco fund. As David mentioned, he's applying a $2 per room night eco fee. Depending on number of rooms and occupancy and that kind of thing, an average hotel can generate, and I say average, again, we can run the numbers exactly for your property, but around $40,000 to $50,000 a year in an eco fund. Of course, more for larger properties, less for smaller properties, but that's just a bit of a good understanding of what can be generated and then deployed into those projects. And then there's another question here: have you ever had a guest ask that it be adjusted off? I think Kelly alluded to that.
Yeah, it has happened, and it is one of those things where, like taxes, you cannot adjust off somebody's bill, but every once in a while you'll even find out with a DMF, like a destination management fee, where somebody says, "I'm not paying that," and it doesn't happen often, but when it does happen, it's not mandated. It's not a mandatory fee that they have to pay. And the same thing with the eco fee, but it happens so rarely. And every once in a while it will be something like it's an accident that we've got a particular contracted rate for a company that is where the eco fee is waived for that specific company for whatever reason. And then it might be an accident that we have to take it off. But yeah, it has happened. Not often.
Extremely rare for us.
Yeah.
Has it ever happened? Yes, but rare.
Same for us too. And I also it's not something like if they want to opt out, they want to opt out. Like we won't try and convince them otherwise. And it's very understandable, and we'll take it off and then that's that.
Yeah, the way that the guidance that we provide to hotels is that it's a mandatory fee, just like paying for your room is mandatory. It's something that the hotel has decided to undertake. However, just like anything, if you have a guest who's unhappy about anything in the room or with their stay, it's at the hotel's discretion to make an adjustment. But it's not considered an optional fee. It's a fee that's there, but it really is, if you need to keep a guest happy for whatever reason, we don't want to restrict your ability to do that. All right. Any other questions? I have one final question for the panel, if there aren't any others No, the hotel would not still have to pay. It's really just based on the actual fees that were collected. So we request that information every month from the hotel, what was collected, and yeah, there's not a requirement. All right. So the final question I have for our panel, if we don't have any others from the audience, I don't see any more. No, I think I'm not missing anything there. What advice would you give to other hoteliers looking to get started, either with EcoFund, but even just more broadly on their sustainability journeys? I think a lot of folks have made decent progress, or maybe they once had a green team, but it kind of fizzled out and they don't have, you know, any momentum, or they're not really sure how to really get started, or they've done a few good projects that they feel good about, but it wasn't really part of a, you know, an overall strategy. So what advice would you share? And let's start with Julia.
Well, I would say, you know, start small. You know, sometimes sustainability as a word can feel overwhelming because there's so much under that umbrella. But like for us, when we started, you know, we did the lowest hanging fruit. We started with a reusable towel linen program, you know, which is a pretty simple thing to do. We removed bottled waters in the rooms and things like that. So with smaller projects, one step at a time, and as you get more into it, then you know you can start becoming more ambitious. The other thing I would really recommend conducting an audit, because there's probably things that you're already doing that are out there, you know, that you're not even realizing. And also through the audit, it'll really enable you to pinpoint key projects that will make the biggest difference. And then, yeah, and I would say like the eco fee is a great way to start. You get the audit with it. It is, in my opinion, it is a low risk. And, you know, sustainability often, there's that fear of the ROI, that, you know, the investment that you have to put initially, and basically the eco fee kind of solves that problem, because it's a way for you to get that money and then to invest into those key projects that would have been overlooked otherwise. So, yeah.
Thanks, Julia. Kelly.
Well, I would say that it's super important to make sure that you know where you're starting from and make sure you've got that measurements tracked. And again, the EcoFund team really helps with getting that done. But even if you're not using EcoFund, if you're tracking your consumption and you're tracking your costs, that's a really good baseline to start from, so that if you are doing anything, you actually have something to measure. The other thing I think I've found is really successful with our teams is when you do complete a project, because we're using our EcoFund and our energy consultant with EcoFund, we have measurements of like, we're doing this project because it is going to save X number of, you know, whether it be gigajoules or kilowatts or whatever. Again, you know, Julia referenced the LED project. So to get your property 100% LED compliant, and how much that will save you in energy use, but also how much it will save in actual expense. So sharing that, I find people get super excited, and it doesn't, in our portfolio, even if it's not at their own hotel, if they see that that's happening at another hotel where a project's been completed, it gets them really motivated and it gets them really interested. So sharing the actual measurements, both energy use and cost savings, and even if it's a matter of like reducing your waste measurably, if you can share that, people like to see numbers, and the more you share it with everybody, the more they're involved in going, okay, I get it. You know, we're not just doing this just to save money, but we're also doing this. So I think that sharing the actual measurable goals with your team members is super important, and it just gets them to buy in. So I think those are the two things that I would find are really beneficial when you're starting. The other one I just throw in there is, through this focus that we've done on the last year and a half, especially in BC, there's an awful lot of really helpful rebate opportunities and incentive opportunities that, as we identify those with the focus that we have, helps us accelerate those projects that we can get going on. So that's been really useful as well to start the journey.
Thanks, Kelly. And David, what advice would you provide?
I almost wanted to say ditto for for what Julia and Kelly said. You know, I agree, start small. And I think even if you're looking around your property, there's very much some, you know, low-hanging fruit. Do you need to go through a full-on audit to know that you should probably replace water bottles in your fitness center with a filtered water machine? Do you need to like bring someone in and have them do a full, no, like there's some things in there that, you know, I'm sure everyone's kind of looking around their areas, even listening to this and saying, oh yeah, There is some really small low-hanging fruit, which is easy to do. And I agree with the audit. We don't all know what we don't know. So, and you're going to have time for that because, you're going to have to accumulate funds into that fund in the first place. It's not like on day one, you're going to have 50 grand that you're going to have to go figure out what to do with, right? You're going to have time to get into this program and really start taking time to figure out, what you want to do and what projects you're looking at, and just probably stuff you're thinking about now. There is some audits, like I know like Fortis does an energy audit as well, that in some cases you're not even paying for it. There's some that like there's some audits out there that are covered. So you can even have that stuff kind of started so you can start kind of making like a target of what you're gonna do with it. But there's so much low-hanging fruit, as Julia said. And I still have lots that I had to do here. If anything, it's probably more time getting it all done than it is even the funds at this point. Yeah.
Thanks, David. And of course, through the BCHA Go Green program, energy audits are available for every BCHA member. And then there are more comprehensive audits that Fortis BC will provide, depending on the size of the property and the potential savings over and above that. But that's a good place to get started, and that can help to quantify and understand the eligibility for some of the more comprehensive audits that can be provided. And Fortis will, again, there's different criteria. That NBC Hydro has similar programs as well, but you can determine eligibility for some of those other programs, and then of course all of the rebates can help to offset the costs. And for EcoFund properties, it just helps that EcoFund go even further when you're able to leverage the different rebates and incentives, which are all outlined for you. Maybe I'll thank our panel. Thank you so much for your participation, and thank you for all the great questions. And I'll maybe turn it back over to Carissa to wrap this up.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today for this important conversation and allowing us to identify some of the opportunities that are available through the EcoFund program. A huge thank you as well to all of our incredible panelists for sharing your insights and your personal experiences around these valuable tools. We hope that everyone does leave today feeling a bit inspired and equipped to be able to take advantage of some of these resources we discussed. And we definitely encourage you to reach out if you have any questions or you need any support as you take the next steps. The session will be recorded and we'll share it with all the registrants. And as always, the BCHA is here to help advocate and support you, so don't hesitate to reach out directly for anything. So thank you again for being with us, and we look forward to continuing the conversation as we help everyone build greener properties and a more resilient future together. So thank you again, everyone, and we look forward to seeing everyone soon.